What's going on, everybody? I'm back. I've been having to take a mental break, man, because this stuff going on in the world has been a mess. Not to mention, everyday life has been very stressful for me. It seems like last week, every barrier in life was thrown my way. I'm still here, I'm still holding on. And usually they say grace comes when you can get through that part. And tonight we're going to discuss AOC getting into the ass of MAGA and letting America know that we need to stand vigilant in the face of their intimidation. We'll cover that. Why is it seems that every single week, at least two MAGA men get caught in kiddie porn or they get caught with some secret LGBTQ apps that they're on so they can find somebody to poke them in the hind parts? Well, we got another one, ladies and gentlemen. He was running for governor and his ass dropped out. And then a story that you might not have heard about, Trump and his administration gave $20 billion to Argentina as a bailout. Think about that. 20 billion. Bail out Argentina. That 20 billion could have been sacrificed across all kinds of small businesses in America. We'll dive into that, and we might have a special guest dropping through in a few minutes. All that and so much more. Politics of Being Black starts now.
I'm up early for the dealers come out. Everybody is outside till the killers come out. You ain't eating, you just act full. I'm impactful. Dozen funerals in a month. I got that pull. I will give it to niggas in all rap forms. Ignatius out right now on all platforms.
It's me, ladies and gentlemen. You've got Lamont, Tyson in the building, and guess what? My special guest has arrived. What can I say about this young lady other than she's a trailblazer? She is a very, very liberal woman. And you guys know that the best women on planet Earth are liberal women, first and foremost. And she is doing great things in the state I live in, North Carolina. I'm bringing her to this stage, and her link will be in the video description if you want to catch her later. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Hannah. How are you doing, Hannah?
Hello. Sorry for being a bit late. It is the election day in Durham for the primaries. So my day job went a little bit over talking to people on the streets of Durham about why they vote local. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I always preach to my audience, local vote probably counts a little bit more than the federal. It's just that the federal gets most of the hype. You can affect change way more faster at the local level than what you can at the federal level. And that is a good gateway for you to understand common civics. And so tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, what you do before we get into this stream, and let the people know how you're helping to turn things around in North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Hannah Preston. I'm a public health professional by background. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, but I've lived in North Carolina for my entire adult life. Went to undergrad in Greensboro, specialized in public health and political science, played Division III lacrosse. And then I was a COVID college student. So then I went from there to the University of North Carolina for a master's degree in health policy, specifically focusing on Medicaid. So my bread and butter, what I love to talk about is healthcare access in the state of North Carolina, especially for rural communities, low income people, things like that. So I worked for the Department of Health and Human Services for about a year, working on tailored plans, so helping with some of our most medically fragile North Carolinians. And then I went and worked for a state level nonprofit, lobbying for Medicaid for children and families, which was great. I loved it. It's what I hope to get back to eventually, but was really coming at a crossroads because of everything going on in politics, which I'm sure everyone has been impacted. Public health professionals were having a really hard job, especially in a red state, a very gerrymandered state, a state where not all of our local and statewide elected officials believe in healthcare. So I was kind of fighting an uphill battle. So I got really pissed off and ended up quitting my job. And instead, now I do education on politics and getting people involved. So I'm the founder of Influence NC. It is in partnership with Carolina Forward and the Fine Glass Fund. Really, it's to get young people voting. It's to get young people voting. It's to get folks that aren't, your exemplary politicos up to speed on what's going on in local politics. And that's all through the power of social media. We're also highlighting the really positive things going on across the state because there are so many great things happening locally that we need to highlight more. And then a fun little spin. The other thing we do is we actually train local and statewide elected officials on how to better use social media. That way, hopefully you can see your elected officials online, gives them a little bit more accountability. And so we actually know what they do in their jobs as elected officials.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that. I mean, my goodness, poor me. I'm in trouble on this episode. That was amazing. Hannah is just getting to kind of know me a little bit. We live in the same state. We're kind of in the same region, and our paths have finally crossed, and I'm sure this will not be the last time. My audience is very familiar with me as a respiratory therapist, having started a respiratory therapy outpatient clinic. And Hannah, guess where I started that clinic at? Somewhere where you went to college. The Gateway Education Center in Greensboro is where I started my first outpatient respiratory care services business. And then from there, I started working with kids in early child care, making a difference, doing care plans, going to the homes. I was kind of the bridge between some of the low-income families with the doctor and their low health literacy, and more importantly, just mistrust of the medical community, considering what a lot of African Americans had went through. I was able to decipher for the professionals, and then go decipher for the people in home who had mistrust. And Hannah, I worked that thing for about 10 years. And then when I helped reduce ER visits due to asthma, which was at the time the number one reason why kids missed school was because of asthma.
Yeah.
North Carolina in 2015 decided, oh no, we don't want that anymore. We're going to yank that and we're going to give it to the billionaires to have that money. We're going to replace this in the budget. We're going to get rid of him. Why is he getting paid? Why is he doing what he's doing? Anybody can do that. And they yanked it. And so I'll come back to that because I do have a segment I want to cover health with Hannah. But in the beginning, I want to shake a tail feather and have a little fun segment to get you smiling real quick. This segment I call We've Had It. And this is my homage to the women of the I've Had It podcast. Let me give you the music. And then Hannah, I want you to tell us what you've had it with. Take this music and we'll go from there. Hannah, please tell the audience what you've had it with. And audience, if you're watching this on replay, go to the comment section and tell us what you've had it with in this current day while we're living under MAGA.
I've had it with the fact that we are not being very plain with the fact that ICE is just a rebranded KKK. Because all I'm seeing is about how we're talking about ICE agents. If we do a little history lesson on the similarities, I think folks are going to be very embarrassed when they look back in history and see how they decided to show up. It's textbook of that's what's happening. And instead of white robes, they're now in those horrible looking face masks that we're seeing. So that's what I've had it about. I think folks can say all they want that this was made for a very specific reason. But I think when you're stripping children and families and just folks apart without any kind of identification or anything like that, I think it's horrible. And I think we're seeing what's happening in Chicago, the fact that they are going into apartment complexes, specifically for people of color that are also American citizens. I think it's horrible. And I think folks need to be a lot more plain about how we talk about it and a bit more obvious of this is what's happening and it's horrible. And it's, to me, the rebranded KKK.
As one of those minorities you're talking about, I 100% agree. And to add to your point, now the Trump administration is doing all this backdoor shit where they're calling groups and people who speak about what's going on with the government, they're calling you terrorists. They're trying to defund liberal organizations. They might try to come after your organization. They might target me. They don't want us to say that we don't like capitalism. That's something that they're going to allow people to come and just make up whatever they want to make up. And they're now talking about they want to start wiretapping phones. And as Hannah so eloquently made the point, if you know your history, this was what they did to freedom fighters in the 60s during the civil rights era. They was tapping Martin Luther King's phone. They was tapping Malcolm X's phone. They was tapping Muhammad Ali's phone. They was tapping anyone's phone who was speaking up, wanting equality for everybody and not just the people that thought that they could sit in the seat of power. And so, Hannah, that brings me to my I've had it. I've had it with, we're living in the age, Hannah, of delightment, not enlightenment, delightment. Because the Republicans know that a dumb voting electorate is going to always be the type of person that's going to be, in their mentality, a worker bee, is not going to think critically. They can just pull out a damn Bible and say, just follow this. God has appointed us to lead you, and whatever we say goes. And Hannah, I've had it. I've had it with people not understanding how important education is. I've had it with people not understanding history, which ties into what you just said. I've had it with people giving up their power because they don't want to educate themselves on how the government can work for everyone if you stop voting against your interests in favor of voting for what makes you feel good, which is to see Trump pick on people that he has told you are the reason why you can't succeed. And then those same people get an attitude, Hannah, if you call them racist, if you tell them that what you're doing, you're basically burning down the house we all live in just so that you can see me burn, and you're going to burn too. And they don't get it. So, Hannah, I've had it. What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. I think talking about education is critical right now. I mean, I think we forget that the reading level in the United States of America is a 6th grade reading level. And we're seeing that because you cannot debate politics with folks that don't understand fact versus opinion, because we're seeing folks try to get rid of deep parts of history because they don't want to believe it's true. And I think that's because when they don't agree with history and what that's looked like and think that they can just change it, that makes them better people. Those are still the same folks that are going to church on Sunday, but calling you slurs on a Monday. So, I think at a certain point, we just need to call a spade and just say it's an educational crisis. And that's intentional. And that's where things like AI are going to make that worse, because you have a lot of well-educated people who are trying to talk to folks who don't want to opt in, that don't want to educate themselves. And you can't argue with ignorance because they're never going to change.
Well said. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and we was trying to figure out, how do you pierce that MAGA bubble? Because you're talking about people, Hannah, who are in a delusion. And people who are in a delusion, you can't fact bomb them because that makes them hunker down more into the delusion. And what we figured out, if you can stomach it, the best way to get them to start pulling that veil back a little bit is if you have to tell them a pretty good coordinated story, and that story has to relate to a family member or someone that they love in the public sphere. And it's frustrating because you would think that just highlighting the facts of what's going on in this country and how it harms you would be enough, but it's not. And so
no, absolutely not. And I think it shows a lack of empathy that's there as well. I was at the General Assembly last month for the legislative session, and they were talking a lot about the stabbing that happened in Charlotte and how, of course, very sad on all fronts, but how they categorized this man who happened to be a Black man who had severe mental illness, and the way that they just categorized him as this like monster instead of feeding into, there are so many mental health resources that we could be funding that we're choosing not to, and the system failed him. I mean, I think it's showing that there's just a lack of awareness. And also in the same front, we're in a really interesting state. We are 80% rural in this state. And so I know that there are folks that have very different lived experiences than we do. And how do you do that? And unfortunately, I think COVID was a really interesting example of that. Folks didn't believe in COVID until either a family member passed away or got severely ill. It shouldn't have to take something to happen to you for you to care about it. And that's where empathy comes in. And I think we're also having an empathetic crisis in our country as well.
Well, Hannah, what they're doing on the right, and I covered this maybe about 3 weeks ago, Democrats have also got to talk about this church problem, this biblical problem, this religious problem we're having, because in these churches, they're teaching people that empathy and apathy both are wrong, especially empathy. They're teaching you that Jesus didn't want you to have empathy. Now, I don't believe in a higher power, but the people that claim to believe in a higher power, if you know the Bible, and I've read the Bible because I was raised on the Bible, Jesus was all about empathy. That was his whole thing. He hated riches. He didn't like people that did these public displays of worship. And he had empathy for the lowest people on the totem pole in his era, if you're someone who's supposed to be in the Bible. And you'll watch these right-wing pastors teaching the congregation that empathy is close to Satan. And it's just like, are you serious? You got to be kidding me. And then, Hannah, they try to tie that into women and why they make a case for why women shouldn't be allowed to vote unless it goes through the husband. So I'll let you speak on that, and then we'll get into the meat of the show. If you haven't heard about how the right-wing religious machine is now saying empathy is bad and is akin to Satan.
I think the only thing to say about that is you can't say love thy neighbor if that means you have to pick who lives next to you. I mean, if it's love thy neighbor, it's whoever is living next to you regardless. And so as someone who also grew up in a religious household who no longer follows that practice, that was one of the reasons I no longer. I think we have really shifted religion in a way to enable folks to act poorly and then relate it back to the Bible. And I think that's horrible. When it comes to women and what that looks like, I had a fun little stint over the last 6 months of working in a bridal store. During that time, I registered a lot of women to vote and also talked about the SAVE Act, which was the bill that was trying to affect trans people, but also women. If your name was different than your birth certificate, you were not going to be able to vote. So if my former employer is watching, I apologize. I was telling a lot of women not to change their name legally to make sure that they were able to vote. So there's a lot of hate going on toward women, I think toward a lot of different groups, a lot of different minority groups. And there's a lot to get into on that front.
You got that right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us know how you feel. Post your comments. Link for Hannah is in the video description. I also put a link in there for her TikTok, so that you can go there. If you're an NC native, we would love to hear from you. We're both from NC, and we're trying to help this state make a turn for an even better future. So come and support us. Let us know what you think. First subject I'm going to throw at you today, Hannah, is my homegirl AOC. She's one of the very few people who's unapologetic about what's going on in America. She's unafraid about what's going on, and she's not bought by the corporate APAC machine, which is another issue for another day. We got to talk about that. And she says what she needs to say. Well, she went on a great rant about how this administration is trying to intimidate people from doing a whole number of things. And I want to get your take on what she said. Let's take a listen. And when she's done, the floor is yours, because this is about 2 minutes. So let's take a listen. Shout out to the I Have It podcast, Jen and Pumps. I love y'all.
I think there's two things that are happening at once, and this is something that's very important for people to understand. One, there absolutely is an unprecedented abuse of power, destruction of norms, erosion of our government and our democracy in order to prop up an authoritarian style of governance. That is happening. However, they are weaker than they look. And it is important that we remember that, because what they rely on is the impression of power, the perception of inevitability, in us giving up in advance to say, oh, what's going to happen if I stand up, etc. Nothing's going to happen. They rely on that perception of inevitability and power so that people comply in advance and acquiesce in advance and give up in advance. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump is at record levels of unpopularity in his tenure. The Republican House is at record levels of unpopularity. They are underwater across the board, and they know it. And that is causing them to double down in public, but it is backfiring. That is why, whether it's a shutdown, whether it's all of this, they want us to blink first. And we have too much to save. Protecting people is too important a task for us to give up before anything even starts. So they may want to send people in, but these National Guardsmen do not want to be turned against their fellow Americans. We're seeing this here in Washington, D.C. It is an insult. Donald Trump is insulting the service members of this country by putting them on these silly tasks that they themselves do not want to be enforcing. And so we have to understand that standing up matters, that our voice matters, to not give in to this cynicism, because that is what they rely on in order to perpetuate this idea that they are that they have total immunity from consequence. They will experience the consequences of this, but we have to be the consequence, which is why we have to stand tall right now alongside everyday Americans who want us to be standing up right now as well.
Wow. What do you think about that one, Hannah?
First of all, her outfit, her hair, and her makeup is always giving, but I love that color. I think she looks great. I think she had said it spot on. The perception of power is what's happening right now. I mean, if you've seen the White House Instagram, I think that's a really good indicator of it is a shit show. And I think we need to play into that. I mean, if you have a bunch of 19-year-olds running the White House plus Donald Trump, it's not great. And I think this is where we also rely on two things. This is why you have folks that are not traditional elected officials running for office. Knowing that AOC's background is in service staff, that is very clear in the best way, where she is there to educate folks what's going on in her community. I love the way she uses social media. She's always on lives, answering people's questions. There's not another legislator to her capacity that's doing that. And I think that should be the standard in terms of language and talking about what's going on in her day to day. But yeah, this perception of power. I mean, let's talk about it. They were all about being, very USA, America, like make America great again. Well, guess what? You now have over 1 million veterans who you've cut their access to healthcare because they're on Medicaid. Right. So how American is that? So I think we are going to see rural North Carolina, rural America being affected. Republicans oftentimes are the ones that are of lower income. Safe to say, healthcare is about to get cut and be a lot more expensive. Doesn't matter who you voted for, your healthcare is going to be more expensive, but we're going to see, across the aisle on the Republican side, that's going to be more deeply affected. So I think she's right. Keep doing what we're doing. Keep doing things like this. I think all of us know at least somewhat about the Constitution and freedom of speech, and I think we ride on that. I think there's going to be a lot of scare tactics, and I think as long as we're doing things that are still safe, because I think also this other idea is political violence is a thing right now, obviously, and it's becoming a lot more extreme. So I think also knowing the difference of I can speak up and know my voice, and also I know it's in an unsafe situation. And I think everyone has to make that call for themselves, but still speaking up in a way that feels safe and true to them, because we're not even 6 months in, I'm afraid to say. So I think there's a lot of power that's going to come out of this, and a lot more people that are going to use their voice for good, because we don't have another option at this point.
Amen to that. And I'm not even religious, so you get many soul claps on that one. I completely agree. But I also want to add to what you said, for individuals who you feel intimidated by this and you want to fight, I would encourage you to find groups, local groups in your community that are democratic, so that you can align yourselves with them to kind of help you boost that confidence to speak up, to fight. Look at what I'm doing with Hannah. I plan on attaching myself to her and her group, so that we all know that when we speak out, if something were to happen to us, there's someone we can call to say, I need your support. I think about this all the time as someone who's living by itself right now. If ICE was to see what I say on social media and was to kick in my door and take me somewhere, who am I going to call for support? I can't call the head of the DNC. I would have to speak to someone local. And so, again, just as important as it is that you get involved with local politics, get involved with local groups that work with Democrats, that can affect change, that are working for equality, that are fighting with ICE. Maybe go talk to an immigration lawyer. I've had one of them on the show in the past, and he's talked about what you can say to them. And if you can record it, and consequences will happen. AOC said it. I know it doesn't seem like it's going to happen because we're so caught up in this fog right now, but consequences will happen, ladies and gentlemen. Consequences will happen, and you've got to stay vigilant in the face of this intimidation as they're doing everything they can to try to shrink the numbers for the midterms. When Democrats show up, we win, but we've got to show up, and that's what they're trying to prevent you from doing. So amen to AOC. I'm going to shout her out. I'm going to shout out Bernie. I'm going to shout out Jasmine Crockett. I'm going to shout out Tellerico in Texas, who is a great orator of how the Bible should work as a politician. Andy Brashear, I'm going to shout him out because he's real deep in his faith, and he has a great way of speaking to that base of people and how the Bible really is taught. So I'm going to shout them out. As also other great people that you guys can go follow on social media and see how they're doing. Well, Hannah, I got another one for you.
Bring it on.
I'm going to let you choose these two. So one is about how we're bailing out Argentina to the tune of $20 billion. And the other one is how it seems like every week you can find at least 2 MAGA men that are either messing around with children or watching kiddie porn, or they're secretly into the LGBT community, which they damnation every single night and swear that they're about Christian Judeo values. Which one would you like first?
Let's start with that second one. I'm liking the spice in that. I think there's a lot to be said there. Absolutely.
Well, as a person who has always supported the LGBT community, even before I knew what it meant, I stand up for all those people, ladies and gentlemen, not just my interests, not just their interests, everybody's interest that is marginalized. I'm standing up for them and I'm fighting for them. And oftentimes I catch flack as a black male who stands up for the LGBT community, heterosexual black male, and I just want to see them be happy. I hate when the right just condemns them, do this in the name of Jesus shit, and then every time they have the RNC somewhere, Grindr shuts down. Well, Hannah,
that part.
Take a look at this dude. Are you familiar with this guy?
Oh, yes.
Oh, well, let me play a quick video of him that they sent me from I've Had It. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and get ready for this good hypocritical tea, because MAGA men just can't help not have a stick poking in their ass, but they want to do it behind scenes. Here we go.
A MAGA Republican running for Wisconsin governor just dropped out of the race after being caught following a trans adult film star and other sexually explicit writers online. Bill Barian, a manufacturing exec and former Navy SEAL, had campaigned on, quote, Republican family values and promised to discriminate against trans kids in school sports. But the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel revealed his Medium account followed a trans porn star and writers on polyamory and explicit essays. Barian deleted the account and quit the race, saying the media spun, quote, stupid articles into a salacious and sensational attack. In his exit statement, he insisted nothing he read was illegal, unethical, or immoral, but he did not acknowledge how his personal proclivities were antithetical to the MAGA movement and his campaign promises. And here's the thing. I just have always known the louder the Christian, the more fucked up the family.
Now, Hannah, let me tell you what I was taught in my house, I was raised by a grandma from the country in Ayden, North Carolina. I was taught, her saying would be, the brighter the picture, the darker the negative, which is basically what Jen just said. That was the country way we said it here. Why is it, Hannah, why is it that these people know they have these proclivities and they fight against it instead of empowering it so that everybody can have their proclivity and not have to worry about judgment, outcasts, or laws blocking them from loving who the hell they want to love, and you just lie about it. And if he really didn't do anything wrong, which it doesn't sound like he done anything wrong legally, why did you take your ass out of that governor's race? Floor is yours, Hannah.
This is why men need therapy.
If more people in general in politics went to therapy, I think a lot of these issues would be solved. Because I think there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done. And I think it's super unfortunate. I mean, there are a lot of great LGBTQ plus folks that should be in office that are not, that I think could be. And I think that is a great way to kind of flip this narrative. I mean, I think most of the Republican Party needs to do some soul searching as well. Yeah, I think it's embarrassing. And I think Jen said it best of like, what are we doing? It's okay to love who you love and also not fit the cookie cutter, a dog and kids and your white picket fence. But to fully go and take people's rights away because you are not comfortable with accepting your true self is not American, and it is not someone who should be in office. Hannah, let's just call it what it is. It's self-hatred. That's what it is. You're self-hating who you are because society or your upbringing has taught you that it's wrong. Now, my mom taught me that eating broccoli was the right thing to do. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't eat broccoli. Fuck that shit. I'm not eating broccoli, and I'm still better off for it. Just because your parents and your church said that something was bad for you, when you grow up and you get critical thought, this man went to the military, Navy SEAL or whatever she said he did. So he has some base level of cognizance and critical thinking. When you get to that point, it should be an easy slam dunk to think people should be able to love who they love, whether it's man or woman. And if you're feeling this on the inside of you, it should really be an easy situation so that you don't got to sneak around and do it. But this is what I learned from white MAGA men, Hannah, and men in power. They oftentimes want to make things illegal so that they can have the fruits of all this stuff to themselves because they can afford to get out of the legal battle. They can afford to make things disappear. They make it hard for the average guy or the average woman to do what they want to do so that they can have the whole field to themselves. And if they want to go on a put their penis in a hole in the ground spree, well, damn it, they can put it everywhere they want to put it. And I hate it. I hate it. I just hate it.
I mean, I think a great example is also talking about abortions. I mean, how many folks are voting against abortions, but have also had to turn around and use those same services? I just think it's very hypocritical in that way. And I don't know if you've seen Hunting Wives on Netflix, but it's a great laugh about a lot of this, of what it looks like to be a Southern Republican and how oftentimes things are not what they seem. And there are a lot of skeletons in the closet.
Well, Hannah, you don't know this about me, but I'm a script writer too. And my mentor that taught me how to script write is the person that wrote Hunting Wives. Her name is Rebecca Cutter. Shout out to you, Rebecca. I got to get you back on the show. And Hannah, if you go to my other YouTube channel that does movie and reviews, you'll see me and her having an interview. It's the header for my channel. That's my girl. And I knew that she was going to nail that show because she's a big liberal, but she, in her lifetime, at one point in time, was surrounded by what we're talking about right now. So it was very easy for her to write this stuff. And I knew she would knock that one out the park. She did it. She did the thing.
She did. I've watched it twice already. And as someone who's often downtown, it was making me giggle because there are definitely some ties between that show and what goes on in the South for sure.
Definitely, definitely. She nailed that one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think about people self-hating, being hypocrites, not letting everybody else enjoy what they could enjoy in the comforts of their own humanity because they want to hoard all the stuff for themselves and they want to make it hard for people to do what they want to do so that they can take advantage of it. I guess we'll go ahead and go to the bailout that should have went to the people instead of Argentina. Well, Hannah, we've got a situation right here where Argentina got a $20 billion bailout. Scott Bessent, Trump said, give them the money. We can do some good things with them, and maybe we can get some of that money back. Well, Hannah, what happened was they got the banana in the tailpipe. They gave the money to Argentina that they thought was going to come back to us. It winds up going to China. And the only person that benefited from this deal was a rich billionaire, as if a rich billionaire needs any more kickbacks. Here's the story, Hannah. Shout out again to the ladies of I've Had It. And this is one I think people need to pay attention to, because as we're talking about people losing health insurance, a military and financing and money that they've needed for so long, middle class and poor struggling, $20 billion could have went a long ways to helping we've got 350 million people in America. Hell, you could have given everybody almost $1,000 of that money. But instead, you decide to waste it like this.
Taxpayers are bailing out Argentina with $20 billion, and it mostly benefits one well-connected GOP billionaire while hurting American farmers. Back in 2023, Elon Musk tweeted this after the country elected right-wing populist Javier Milei as president. Just 2 years later, Argentina found itself begging the U.S. for help after taking a chainsaw to its economy, much like Musk did here, leaving the country in crisis. So U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced a $20 billion package to rescue their economy, which has almost no impact on the U.S. I thought Trump was supposed to be America first, but Bessent's announcement did have a huge benefit for one American billionaire hedge fund manager, Rob Citron, a close friend of Bessent's and the co-founder of Discovery Capital Management. Citron has invested heavily in Argentina's right-wing economic program, and just days before the bailout announcement, he purchased even more Argentine bonds. So thanks to U.S. taxpayers, this billionaire's precious investments are protected amid a downturn, and his profits will get a boost. And guess what else? Leaked texts from Bessent's phone show the U.S. may have gotten played, as right after the deal, Argentina removed export taxes on soybeans and struck a trade deal with China, which immediately pulled out of existing soybean arrangements with American farmers. In the end, our tax dollars will help the right-wing Argentina government, China, and this one billionaire friend of Bessent's.
$20 billion, MAGA, $20 billion for one fat cat friend of Donald Trump. And we're going to have to bail out the farmers, the U.S. farmers that Trump has lied to. And he likes to just play fuck around and find out with his tariffs for sport. He's wrecking the U.S. economy. And of course, there's some fat cat suck ass billionaire.
Hannah, let me add to that point, because one of the things I do on a day-to-day basis is trade stocks. So I'm kind of following what the business people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And so you hear how that money was given to them, and they thought that it was going to come back to the farmers in America. And they was just like, oh no, F you, we're going to take this money and do what we want to do. It is such rich hypocrite that they do that when Trump has started taking positions in companies. Intel is 10%, and now he's trying to do it with a Canadian energy company because we give them money. So his excuse is, since we give you money, we need to step in as a government and get a piece of the action. Hannah, nothing drives me more crazy than the song and dance that American capitalism and capitalists pull and lie to the American people about on any given day. Any given day. So if this was any Democrat saying that he's going to commingle the government to have ownership of an American company, they would have took us out and made us do 40 paces and turn around and blew the gun off. That's what they would have done to a Democrat. But because it's Trump, and because he's bailed out most of the rich people, they just want to turn the blind eye to and just say Trump being Trump. So having given you a little bit more detail and insight, Hannah, what do you think about this situation?
I mean, are we shocked? We have someone who was running a failed show, giving people money that then went poorly and went belly up. I mean, we shouldn't be shocked. I think the other thing here is we now know that he can't say, and his administration can't say, we didn't have the money to fund healthcare. We didn't have the money to support folks, because we are making choices to actively hurt Americans. I just don't understand it. And I think it's something where to say that it would come back and help farmers, you could have given that money directly to a lot of farmers in the rural parts of this country. And I'm sure they would have loved it and thanked you for it. The other thing that I've also never understood, also, I'm just a girl and math is not my thing, so correct me if I'm wrong on this. But if you fund people to do their jobs, if you fund people well instead of the $7.25 that is our minimum wage in the state of North Carolina. If you make healthcare affordable, if you make childcare affordable, people are going to want to work, and that's going to fuel the economy. So in the long run, that would be helpful to states, that would be helpful to the country at whole, because people will actually want to work when we provide that to them. Now, people can't afford to work because childcare is through the roof. In the state of North Carolina, it is more expensive to have your child go to childcare than it is to get a degree from the University of North Carolina. That is fucking absurd. If you actually paid people to do their jobs and paid them well and a living wage and allowed people to get things when it comes to healthcare and not have to go into medical debt, I promise you our economy would thrive. So the idea that we can just send this to folks, also, I will say everyone in that video looks like they're out of the dang wax museum. With all that money, you think a good haircut would go a long way, but who am I to say?
No, they got those trailer park haircuts, Hannah. They go to Supercuts, get the number 2, and then go right back to the trailer park and tan. So no, we can't expect style from this administration. No.
Not even a little. And I think here's the thing too. They're being obvious that they don't care. They're being obvious that they don't care about Americans. And I think that is, will I ever say anything great about the Republican Party? This will be my one thing. Their messaging has been obvious. And that is why I think it's gotten the traction that it was. It is very black and white, what they're doing. And that messaging is working. And that's really scary because it shows how many people also believe that. And also, I think it's something that we as the Democratic Party need to do better. We need to get obvious about our messaging and be confident about our messaging and say it with our whole freaking chest, because we got these crazies dragging our economy and making us not want to live in the United States of America. I've had more conversations with folks that are like, where can I get a visa to not live here? And that's what we don't want. We need folks to be able to have full pride in being someone that lives in the state of North Carolina or lives in whatever state it is an American, because if we all leave, it goes to shit, and not everyone can afford to leave and what that looks like. Right. So I think, what the hell? I don't know.
I'm going to follow up to Hannah and say a couple of things. Number one, the guest I'm having on tomorrow night did leave America because of Trump and is living in Canada right now as we speak. Gone. And is going to be up here talking about it tomorrow. And the other thing I would say to your point about the Democrats need to just get on a simple message of how their policies can help the greater good of America, everybody. And if we're going to slight anyone, it needs to be the people that can fully take care of themselves financially. It would resonate, even though you would still have some people hemming and hawing that they don't want to see it. If you were to do the policies, implement it with the government, and have the people that implement it with the government give you the courteousness of the folks at Chick-fil-A, it would work. One reason why some people get so bitter about the federal government, and it's a lot of people that hear the story of federal government but don't experience it, and when they do experience it, it's a bad experience, is because sometimes the government doesn't have the nicest people to work with. Think about TSA. When you go through that line, those people can be somewhat intimidating. They can be somewhat irritating. Make their asses start acting like Chick-fil-A. Make the government an inviting space. When someone needs to go and get food assistance, medical assistance, have the people working with them, treat them as if the money is theirs, because in essence it is. They pay taxes too, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone who buys something is paying a damn tax. Make it seem a little bit more easy and not so hard when someone needs to use the services. And then Democrats, tell the people the services you can provide, and tell it as plain as I'm going to say it. When I'm in debates with Republicans who are not rich, who might be your plumber, your electrician, folks like that are always complaining about how they don't like how the damn government takes so much money out of their pocket and they don't never see it. And I say, well, are you versed in where all that money is going? And they'll say, common things like it's going to Israel and it's going to the Mexicans, it's going to the people who are here illegal. And then I'll challenge them on, okay, so you mean to tell me that you think the majority of your money went to those places and you've never sat down and thought about how the rich people sit here And they capitalize on the money that they can get from the federal government. They socialize their risk. And then when the money comes back, they capitalize on the gains. When at the end of the day, Amazon moving into Mebane, North Carolina, doesn't need a fucking $20 million tax break. That money should go to people like you who have been the pillar of this economy when Amazon wasn't here. You should be getting a cut of that money and not Amazon. Sometimes, Hannah, that works for some of these people. They get to thinking about that like, yeah, you're right. But then they immediately see that I'm black, and then it's, I don't want to listen to this messenger. So I would have to go get Hannah to tell people these things. But at the end of the day, folks, that's what you're dealing with. Why do you insistently think it's okay for people who've got a B behind their name that says billion to continue to get all the tax breaks, to continue to get all the startup money, to continue to get the easy way to power when you keep voting that away by giving it to the Republicans who have proven to you that they don't care about middle class and poor no more than what they can squeeze out of you. You get the last word on this one, Hannah, then we'll move on to healthcare.
A lot to say. I mean, first, I think when we talk about voting in Republicans, North Carolina is one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. So it's some of that is folks aren't getting the option. I think the other thing we forget is when it comes to where your money is going, it's going well if you don't know what the services are. Like in terms of like,
Right.
You shouldn't be able to know in your day-to-day what that's going toward. The disruption that we're seeing in terms of government is unusual. In terms of how government is supposed to function, it is not supposed to be disruptive. It is supposed to help you. My greatest thing that I say to folks is like, you don't like where your taxes are going? Do you have a sidewalk outside of your house? Do you have potholes that are filled? Do you have clean drinking water? That is all set by your local governments, which is where a lot of those taxes are coming from. And so, what does your public transportation look like? What do those access points look like for you? That is where your taxes should be going, and that's how they should be looking. Yeah, I think we're just seeing this dysfunction kind of happening of the conversation of where taxes go. I think also people need to mind their business. Like, pay your taxes. You see how it's affecting you locally. Who gives a shit where it's going after that? I don't care. I think the conversation of like, oh, well, people who are not legal immigrants are using this. Okay. I don't care. I mean, it's functioning in my day-to-day just fine. How do I care? If people are still getting the things that they need and their healthcare is still provided. And if that's how the ecosystem is working in terms of the government, sure, I'm happy. I'm minding my business outside of that. I'm also not a billionaire who gets all of these, great perks of it. So whatever. But yeah, all that to say, I mean, I think we've also done a really poor job of talking about how local and state government works. And so people don't understand where their money's going. I think it's also an education problem. There are things that like my business and Influence NC should be doing because governments don't have the bandwidth to educate folks correctly on where that money is going. And so I think it's where that shows where there is such a gap. There need to be people that educate folks, regardless of who you voted for, on where your money is going and what that looks like, because people just also might be ignorant about it. And while that's hard for me to understand, I think there's a time where you need to educate yourself. And I think that's also not attainable for everybody. And so that's where organizations like ours are going to try to come in and bridge that education gap as much as possible.
Which is another reason why you need to contact this young lady, not just because her makeup is immaculate, her hair is impeccable, and that nose ring is as shiny as the mirrors in my home. Those are all excellent reasons you need to contact her too, but contact her for the bigger picture that she's got so much knowledge. She can inform you. She can empower you to be a better citizen. And I'll add one more thing to what you said, Hannah. A lot of the like working class people or independent contracting white guys and some black guys that I meet that are on this tangent about how they are so upset that when they get their paycheck, the government is taking so much out of it. Another reason why I harp on them about, do you know where that money is going, is because what are you arguing about if you don't know where it's going? You don't know what the services it offers. One service or one thing that their tax dollars pays for that pretty much every Republican claim they love: sheriffs, EMS, firemen, police departments, the army, the military. They claim they love that shit, right? And when I had to educate them on the number one thing that comes out of the American budget is the military, and it's still not enough. They kind of look at me like I'm juggling rats or something. They look at me like, oh, who is this N-word? Who you think you are? And then that's when you can kind of see the wheels spinning a little bit. They're starting to, okay, maybe I should take a different look at this. But yeah, folks, understand where your money is going. Just think about it. There are so many things that money is doing to help you. And there's so many things that this money could be doing to improve and do more that we keep voting it away. That's what I want you guys to take away from this and think about. And I'm going to take Hannah to healthcare. Man, I'm about to get in trouble because it's been 10 years since I've been in the field. And I still remember some of the stuff. But Hannah, I'm going to let you take the lead on this. And I've got a story about how this shutdown and the money that they have taken from Medicaid and Medicare, just how atrocious it is. And just today, Donald Trump is saying he's willing to strike a deal with Democrats about Medicare and Obamacare, as Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, has decided she wants to break from the Republican Party. Get this, Hannah. We talked about this in the beginning of this show. It shouldn't have to be where something affects someone else before they can understand how something can affect the greater good of people. Marjorie Taylor Greene is jumping away from the Republican Party because if things happen, her children's premiums are going to go up. So she wants to not vote with them. And it shouldn't be like that, but it is. Take a look at this video from a great, great TikToker. I love this woman. You guys can follow her as well. She puts out great content. Take a look at this, Hannah, then you get the floor.
You are always paying for someone else's health insurance. That's how insurance works. You pay into a pool where some of us are less risky than others, and we are subsidizing riskier people in the health insurance pool. If insurance premiums, so the amount you pay each month for insurance, get too high and become unaffordable, many people will just stop paying for health insurance and cross their fingers and hope an emergency doesn't happen. Most of those people will be people who are generally younger and healthier, who are willing to take the risk. And when that happens, the insurance pool gets disproportionately older, sicker, and higher risk. And as a result, insurers raise premiums even further for the people who are still on insurance plans. That's why when fewer people have health insurance, it usually means higher costs for those of us who do have it. Right now, expanded Affordable Care Act subsidies are set to expire at the end of 2025. Those subsidies made health insurance more affordable for low and middle income families. And as a result, more people signed up, including younger, healthier people. In fact, over 21 million people enrolled in 2024, and the uninsured rate hit a historic low. That's good, because when more people have health insurance, they get care earlier, they stay healthier, and premiums stay more stable for everyone. But if those subsidies expire, many people will see their health insurance premiums increase by up to 75% next year, and millions of people will drop their health insurance coverage as a result. Extending these subsidies to keep healthcare costs affordable for low and middle income families is very popular. The majority of Americans want to extend the tax credits, including the majority of Republicans and the majority of people who self-identify as MAGA. The current Republican Party's goal to cut health insurance assistance is extremely unpopular, and the more people who understand how insurance works and why cutting people from health insurance negatively impacts us both from a public health and economic standpoint, the more unpopular it will become.
And Hannah, I'm gonna give you a caveat to what she said. Most people who aren't versed in what the financial markets do, they don't understand that anyone who's collecting insurance premiums, if you could see the way they take that money and make money off the stock market and bonds hand over fist, because if you never use it, you don't get it back. If you could see the tricks that they do every single day with that money, it would make you want to go, what's the nicest thing I can say? It would just make you very mad. You might want to throw a basketball at a window. Floor is yours, Hannah.
First, I will say I love that creator. Second of all, that graph is from KFF. And so if you want to learn more about Medicaid, you want good graphs, you just want some really awesome information about Medicaid and the healthcare landscape, go to KFF. They are someone that I've referenced for a very long time. They're fact-based, they're evidence-based. I just can't say enough great things about them.
Well, where can MAGA go? Because MAGA don't like facts. So where do we send MAGA?
Most of them don't read either, so they wouldn't even click on that. So what I'll say is that, again, like Medicaid works well. When Medicaid works well, you don't know how it's operating. And what I mean by that is, yes, there are millions of people in the state of North Carolina that use Medicaid. And also, Medicaid funds things like keeping hospitals open. Medicaid keeps things like elderly and retirement facilities open. You wouldn't know that because when it's functioning correctly, it's supposed to be something that's a little bit more transparent in operation. It's often when funding is cut that disruption happens. And we are about to see that in a really high increments here in the state of North Carolina, because not only do we not have a federal budget, we don't have a state budget. And so a lot of cuts are going to happen. And so for those that are on Medicaid, there's going to be a lot of disruption. For everyone else who is on a marketplace plan, as she was saying, there's going to be two options. You're either about to pay an arm and a leg for healthcare, or you're going to drop your plan and be uninsured, which means regardless in all of that, ERs are about to get through the roof packed. So if you loved your 6-hour visit, double it, because that's what we're looking at. I think we also need to contextualize when we talk about people on Medicaid. I feel like it's this idea of like, it is the poorest of the poor. It's people that don't have jobs. Some of that, sure. And also, teachers in the state of North Carolina are paid so poorly that most of which, at least in the western parts of the state, are on Medicaid because they meet the income threshold and it's cheaper than going into the marketplace. So when folks are wondering, hey, what happens when we don't have a state budget? Teachers don't get paid, which means they now have to be on Medicaid, which means they'll probably be uninsured because Medicaid is getting cut in the state of North Carolina. So it's going to impact everyone. And I want to make this very blunt when I say this. People will die because of these choices. When you do not give people access to care, they will pass away. Because we have some of our most medically fragile folks that are on Medicaid that live in rural parts of the state that still have to drive 2 hours to get there, and now they can't afford it. And so that's fully on the hands of our state legislature and our federal administration, because it's going to be a rough time. And there's going to be a lot of education that needs to happen, and a lot of people that will not have medical care or they'll go into severe medical debt.
Hannah, this is unfortunate. I'm splitting up in my relationship, and I might have to start like dealing with the insurance pools and that type of thing. And before I got married, I had to deal with like the high risk pool because I'm an asthmatic. And back then, this was like 2009 or something. Back then I was paying $310 a month I'm thinking, man, my rent was only $500 a month, and my health insurance is $310. I can only imagine what it's going to be like right now. And Hannah is absolutely right about these policies. Stephen Miller came out not too long ago, gave an interview saying that the American population needs to be reduced to about 100 million so that most people can get the benefits of what America has put out while the others scrap for it. That is part of the playbook of that Project 2020 bullshit 5. That's the playbook for it. They want people to suffer. They want people to feel like they have to be beholden to a boss or beholden to the arm of the government that's tyrannical. They want people to do this. And folks, you don't have to do it. MAGA, I know some of y'all are hurting. And I know it hurts your heart to think that, man, I got to vote for somebody blue. But you should, because the blue wants to see the red blood in your body keep pumping, whether you believe it or not. How does the policy Democrats want to stand for, healthcare for all, stand against, I want to cut just about 70% of people off healthcare? MAGA, if you're listening, which one of those policies sounds the best? The one where 70% of Americans can't get access to healthcare, or the one where 85 to 90% of Americans get good quality access to healthcare? And you tell me which one is the party of unification there, because Hannah, that pops up a lot. Oh, Democrats are dividing the country. How are we dividing the country when we're trying to make sure that your asses live, even though you keep voting against your interests? You still voted for a guy who tried to insurrect the Capitol and didn't call any military in for that, but send the military down to Chicago where we're not having insurrections and shit for nothing. For nothing.
Absolutely.
So who's causing the division here? And I'm passionate about this healthcare thing because the state of North Carolina took away my dream job. I was an outpatient respiratory care provider. I worked with kids in a special needs center in Greensboro. I worked with kids that had asthma in early child care settings. And when they came along and said, we're not going to keep funding that, that was about 30 doctors from the triad that followed me to Raleigh to speak against this. And you know what the General Assembly at that time in 2015 said? They said, well, we'll take this under high consideration because it sounds like he's making a difference. He's reduced ER visits. He's made communication between family, kid, and doctor easier. We're gonna take this into high consideration. Well, the very next day, that high consideration must have went out like marijuana did because the shit blew up, ladies and gentlemen. They took nothing into consideration. They just went on ahead and took it out and said, be damn with it, ladies and gentlemen. This is your health we're talking about. And we want to make sure that you're healthy. And if you want to learn more, please check out the good sister Hannah. Her link is in the video description. Hannah, before I let you get out of here, I want to mention one thing. I looked at your background. It's very pretty. It's very nice. And you've got that thing back there that says protect the kids from guns, which is something that this administration has not been doing. And I came up with a plan that I think could help with gun violence. And I've been saying it on a couple of my posts because I've got two young, even though I'm 45, I do have two very young children. I waited real late in my life to have kids. And I'm saddened to see that there's not more emphasis placed on guns when we know who's running around here doing most of this terroristic stuff. So here's a video promo that I cut for my idea for reducing gun violence, and I would love to get your insight on it. Take a listen to this. My friends, I've come up with a decent solution for gun violence. I'm calling this the Lamont Tyson Save the Kids Gun Chip Act. How does it work? We have microchips installed in every high-power manufactured gun and long-range rifle. And anytime that gun gets within a 2-mile radius of a highly populated area, it pings the local authorities, it pings the campus police. Hell, it can also ping the Walmart flashlight guy. And they go see what's going on, and they shut down the situation before it gets there. The next phase of this would be that we have thumbprint activated guns, but for now, let's do the microchip. The NRA, those who own guns, as well as the government should all be happy with this because it helps all of them. NRA makes money because the government would provide the funding to put the chips in the guns. The gun manufacturers get money because of the same situation. The government should be smiling because instead of having these kids die at an early age, you'll have them live and they'll be long living taxpayers. And rednecks who claim that they ain't up to no good should like it too, but I know what they would say. I don't want no damn government tracking me. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If your redneck friend, your MAGA friend, or whoever owns a gun also own a cell phone, their asses is already being tracked. Please share this with your politicians, your local folks who can make things happen. The Lamont Tyson Save the Kids Gun Chip Act, it's a win-win for everybody. Everybody in this situation has skin in the game, and there's no excuses for us not getting this done with the technology we have. This is a win for everybody. Please share. What do you think, Hannah?
Given that it is October 7th, there's been over 200 school shootings in the country. There's a lot that I think needs to be done. I think this is definitely a good option. I think screenings need to be there. I mean, here's the thing. We're in the South. There are a lot of people that are gun owners. There are a lot of Democrats in the South that are gun owners. And also, there's consequences to things. If we could actively handle having our guns and not shooting kids at school, we wouldn't have this issue. And again, it goes back to this is why when you fund things like mental health, we can have both. But without that, there's a lot that needs to be uncovered before that. And I think we also need to be very blunt about it. This is a power issue. legislators do not care about kids if that many school shootings have gone on.
No.
When, our youngest folks, we always say it's for the children. We want to make this a better place. Well, if our kids are getting shot at school, we're not doing shit for them. And so
No.
I think we need to be very clear about how we're talking about that, and also understanding the nuance of like, there's a culture of being gun owners in the South as well. And so how do we have those conversations so that folks are on board and also buy in, so that we have, we don't have to worry about our kids going to school and being safe. Yeah.
So that's why I came up with this plan, because the rednecks would insurrect the government if they said we're going to take the guns, or if they said they're going to restrict access to the guns. So I thought about that being something that's a safe middle point. From now on, you make your guns with chips in them. People that already have guns, the government pays you to bring them in to put chips in them. And that would kind of be a win-win for everybody. Now, I'm for reducing the guns, but we're not going to get that till we get probably a clean slate of Democrats and Republicans that control House, President, Senate. Probably we had to control the Supreme Court too before we can get that kind of measure done. But until that time, I think that this could be a healthy medium. And I've had some support from gun owners that said, no, I like that. I think that could work. But I'm with you. I'm a big believer of counseling, mental health. I'm a big believer in that. And we definitely have an issue with young men right now feeling alone, feeling like they can't get women, blaming education for why they can't get women, all kinds of stupid shit, when you need to talk to someone. Maybe you need to have someone explain to you the best ways to approach a woman. You're going to get rejected sometimes, but there are enough people in the world that you can find you a special boo thing. But while you're doing that, get some counseling so you can understand how to speak to the boo thing, so that when you get her, you don't run her away. And when you come and approach her, you don't run her away too.
Yeah, I think it also goes back to, we need to also better support parents, because we know the language in the household and how parents are talking to their kids is such a big indicator of how kids then go out into the world and talk about it. So if mom and dad or whoever is experiencing mental illness and that loneliness, that child is going to feel that. And we know a lot of the time school shootings, when they are younger people, there's a lot of loneliness there. They get access to a parent's gun. So I think it's kind of this public health epidemic, this mental health epidemic. I also, based on this conversation, I wanted to also shout out an organization called Not Just a Smile. They are Charlotte-based. It is all about free mental health counseling, one-on-one counseling for people of color in Charlotte. So please check them out. They just do such great work, and I just found them actually today. So the timing worked out great. So if you need an organization to be a part of or to support, definitely check them out. But yeah, I think it shows that we all need to do a better job of talking about mental health. I think a lot of these issues that we talked about today go away if we destigmatize a lot of it. And having open conversations with folks, because again, if we're not talking about it, we can't destigmatize the issues, and we can't fix some of the things that need to be.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, we got to give her the standing ovation. Standing ovation for Hannah. Here we go. We certainly have enjoyed having you. We hope you come back. Hopefully I'll be meeting you in person real soon. See what kind of good trouble we can get into the state of North Carolina. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get more of Hannah, she puts out amazing content on TikTok. Her link is in the video description. Any parting words you want to give to the audience before we get out of here, Hannah? Let them know what's going on with you, what you got. You've got some good things going on. You've got something coming up October 23rd from 12 to 2. And you might see my face at that one.
Please come. Yeah, I will say the big thing about Influence NC is giving folks the tools to make educated decisions, local and statewide. So a lot of what I'm doing is education-based. It's going to be fun, but also I want you to feel confident going to the polls and knowing who you're voting for. That is my goal, to increase education and involvement, because while you can say fuck the government's fucking us right now. And so that means we got to be to the polls and voting and involved, because it's impacting our day-to-day a lot more. Yes, so Influence NC, we're going to be across the state. We will be in Durham doing a launch party October 25th at the Velvet Hippo. Come hang out, see us. We have some Hot Girls Vote merch that we will be giving out. So yeah, just thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to meeting a lot of folks that are watching this at some of our events coming up.
Well, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Go get your hot girl t-shirt. You might even meet a hot girl there while you're at it. For those folks looking for nice, educated, critically thinking people, that is going to be the spot you should go to. Don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe. Until that next Sexy as Hell video, I'm going to give you my favorite outro. It's my homegirl with that famous remark, and we will see you guys next time.
Somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body. Somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body. Somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body.